Hey, going live on both Facebook and TikTok, so I have to wait for both the cameras to catch up here. I'm Linda K. Gifford, and I'm a CSA survivor, and I am here to tell you that we need to legislate consent. This is what today we're going to talk about. If you are a CSA survivor, we've spent the last 6 weeks talking about the SPADES method, which please review all of that. It's on TikTok. It's not quite organized perfectly, but it's all there in playlists. Go to the current playlist and please learn personal healing, and we'll talk about that again. But today, as a wrap up for getting through all of the letters, S, the shame is not yours. We worked at length on that. P, separating the past from the present. That is dissociation. How you do it, why you do it, that you do it. We went through a lot of things, a lot of methods. And then we went on to A, ask for what you want. You can't just take what's given in life. You've got to ask for what you want. So we talked about how to do that. And then this D, which is dive in. Don't wait to feel okay to be okay. Just, you're a survivor. You're never going to feel like you weren't. And that's okay. Embrace that. And then move on to the E in spades, educate and advocate. I need you to become warriors for change. I founded Sweet Survivor expressly to help rescue victims of sex trafficking. I wasn't even sure how I was going to do that. I just knew that survivors working to end exploitation and trafficking could do something. So I founded SweetSurvivor.com, and I just was asked by the leader of the Consent Awareness Network, CAN, huge organization to legislate consent, by Joyce M. Short, who's the founder of that and a fellow survivor of both childhood sexual assault and sexual assault. She's been working on this for decades. And she called me up and we talked for nearly an hour, and she made me understand that it all begins with legislation. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Consent is the hang-up. Everything I can do to help you personally as a neurolinguistic practitioner, I'm grateful that I can do that. It's helped me. I can fast track you. Growing the workshops is very important to me. Growing the spades, surviving spades, 6 steps from trigger to happy workshops. But I'm not going to say more important, but actually more importantly, yeah, for anything to change, we have to legislate consent. It has to be done. So what that means is, for one thing, you can start using the hashtag FGKIA, which stands for freely given, knowledgeable, informed consent. And the reason this needs to happen is because people who take their assailants to court, and they're not abusers, they're assailants. When you rape somebody, it's assault. I said it's going to come up every week, and it will. I said I will talk about it endlessly, and I intend to. Call it assault. So when you assault somebody sexually, there's a lot of reasons why they're not kicking and screaming and fighting back, and the court doesn't listen to any of that. The court doesn't care if you were groomed for years until you were assaulted. The court doesn't care if you were a child bride as long as your parents legally agreed. The courts don't care if somebody tricked you and said they were somebody they weren't, became your... This happened actually to Joyce Short, founder of CAN, when she was an adult. After already being sexually assaulted as a child, she had a voluntary relationship with someone who turned out was just making it all up. You can't prosecute that person. That's still considered consent. It's not considered rape if you trick somebody into bed. It's not considered rape if you were not kicking and screaming and fighting your way out. And that's indecent, because we've learned through the last 6 weeks of my Spades workshop, I hope you've learned that neuro responses, the way that neural connectivity, I'm going to back up a little here. Okay. I'm going to get all NLP on you now. Here's the Neurolinguistic Practitioner training coming out. Your brain has a fight or flight center, the amygdala. Your brain has a logic and reason center, the hippocampus. Studies, all brain scans show that the hippocampus in C-PTSD, CSA survivors with C-PTSD, and other people with C-PTSD have, but especially the worst of the worst are always the childhood sexual assault survivors, because it's such an egregious offense. It's soul sucking, and we've talked about that. But your soul can't be hurt, and it can't be bought, and it can't be traded, and it can't be sold, and it can't be commoditized. But it can be, but you got to stop that. That's where I'm going. But backing up, I'm getting ahead of myself. To the educate and advocate. If we don't legislate consent, if we don't make people understand that tricking someone, that grooming a child, that these things are criminal offenses that go hand in hand with changing the language of society to call it assault, sexual assault, not sexual abuse. Once we change the language of society, people start thinking differently. So it's not enough to do your personal healing. So here on the outro, I said we'd have the outro week, and this is it. I'm going to go back a lot to the E in spades, educate and advocate. Because your personal healing isn't going to protect your sister or your mother or your daughter or your granddaughter or son from being victimized. And while rigorous control might keep them out of sex trafficking, it's very hard to spot the teacher, preacher, wrestling coach, etc., who's right in your backyard, or worse yet, the father or brother who's been doing this so long that the child, they know they can't talk about it, they know they're not supposed to, they don't know it's wrong till they do, and then they're a freak. I mean, this was my experience. I talked about that at length last time. I said I was going to tell my story, and I don't like that word either. That's a word I want to change. I want to call it reality. People have realities, not stories. What happened to me is very real. And while, back to amygdala hippocampus, while I was undergoing this, we've learned that the brain of everybody, we've had the nurture nature argument lots. We've heard that growing up. Is it nurture or nature? A little of this, a little of that, probably both. Maybe more than, that's the argument. But throw that out the window, because modern science has caught up to understand that every one of us has a different neural network. Every one of us has a neural network that is built on what we perceive around us. And if what you perceive around you includes being sexually violated by anybody on a regular basis, then dissociation follows. You learn to dissociate. You have to. You have to. As I've said before and will always, the whole world is dissociating, especially women and others, just to try to have an income. The reason that prostitution is the oldest profession is because it's literally the only thing women were allowed to do early on. I just watched a program today, actually, on medieval sexual mores in medieval times, and centered on European medieval times. And I mean, I could do a whole live stream on that. I don't care to, honestly. But regulating sex trade has been a regular thing for a long time. So we've got a lot of people out there. This is why I'm swinging more moderate all the time. I am obviously very liberal and very progressive, but swinging so far out there that you're glorifying being commoditized. I'm not down for that. I think something went wrong in your life. I think if you decided to be you know, somebody's sugar baby to get through college, we shouldn't praise you because you're getting a doctorate off of fucking people, off of having sex with people. Sorry, edit it out. But that's me. What I do know is that consensual sex is knowledgeable, no, freely, F, given, G, knowledgeable, K, informed, K, consent. Knowledgeable, that also takes into account people who have mental disabilities that are preyed upon. People who have sex with people they're in charge of, who are in comas. This kind of stuff goes on more regularly than you want to believe because we don't like to talk about it. So we have to talk about it. Mostly I want you to experience inner healing for yourself, right? But on another level, don't take this the wrong way, but I could care about you in the whole scheme of things. If you don't get healed, then my world doesn't get healed. Then my grandchildren are at the same risk that I was, that people are today. And with the risk increasing instead of decreasing, I find that problematic. So I want to throw in here, I have added onto sweetsurvivor.com right at the top, we report to Thorn. If you don't want to report to Thorn yourself, Thorn does the cyber research across local, regional, federal, military, and private agency groups, right? They connect it all, and they have rescued, I said over 2,000. Correction, they've rescued over 6,000, and that's an older number too. Victims of sex trafficking. So, you don't have to be afraid that your neighbor or the person down the street or in the business next to yours or whatever is going to come back on you. Even if you go to Thorn, it's anonymous. But if that frightens you and you want another level of protection, go to my chat box and just put the message in my chat. And I will get it to Thorn. And these people aren't going to get their doors knocked down and arrested and investigated like that. They're going to do cyber research to see if there's anything there or not. And if there's not, everybody's good. And if there is, aren't you glad you saved somebody from sex trafficking or violation or rape or assault today? Isn't that better than not? That being said, if you're in trouble now, RAIN's number is 1-800-656-4673. 1-800-656-4673. But I want to tell you a story that just happened a few days ago to my niece. She's on her, could see her porch from her ring. She's got children, right? And there was a homeless woman on the porch all day. And she tried, and I tried, called everyone that's supposed to be there, that's supposed to help women who don't have anywhere to go. And nobody had any room at any shelter. I was in Kansas City. Nobody had any room at any shelter in Kansas City. Nobody. Not Moxaw, not churches, nobody. So finally, I advised her to call the police and ask them to take her somewhere safe. Surely they would know somewhere at least warm and dry, even if it's a cell. So she had already done that by the time she got my message because, like I said, you can't just take in everybody off the street, but there needs to be a place for them to go. So she was very dismayed to see the police show up and remove the woman from her porch and then just send her off. They didn't take her anywhere. It's below freezing out. They didn't care what her story was, and there wasn't anywhere for her to go. So Sweet Survivor, something I've dreamed of that needs to become a reality, is I want to join, instead of just giving money to Janie's fund, which is Steven Tyler's 2 homes, one in the UK and one in America, for sex trafficking victims who have a holistic, life. They can live there for a year. They get training, they get help, they get therapy, they get nutrition, guidance. They get help with school and job, you know, all of that. But there's 2 of them in the world, and each one holds about 30 people to my understanding. And every time someone homeless tries to go to a shelter, they're full. So Sweet Survivor is adding a mission of building shelters across this country, and I'm going to beat down the doors of every major public figure that says they care. If you've got bank, we need it. And I'm going to ask for it now. So, legislate consent. I need you to go to CAN, C-A-N. It is the Consent Awareness Network, consentawareness.net. And there you will find, by your region, lists of who you can talk to. And you need to send emails, call them up, and tell them that consent needs to be legislated. You don't have to tell them your story, but you do need to tell them that you or someone you know, love, care about, or I don't know, maybe just because you have a mother. I think that kind of is pretty inclusive right there of everybody. That consent needs to be legislated. And then please start using, and Joyce Short asked me, this is all Joyce Short's work that has fueled the CAN movement. She's the leader of CAN. She founded it, I say decades ago, I'm not even sure how long. Long before anybody was talking about the Me Too movement, she was saying consent needs to be legislated. She should have the right to sue her assaulters to expose them. And the reason, it's not just vengeance, you know, I don't know if she's got any vengeance. I do, and I admit it. But it's for change. It's because if we let them walk, they're going to do it to someone else. Why do you think someone who did something to you is not going to do it to someone else? Just think about that. That's your homework tonight. Up till now, the homework's always been about personal healing. Your homework tonight is to think about the children. There are children as young as 3 in sex houses. There are sex houses in Singapore and Thailand and all over the world where people go to buy blowjobs from 5-year-olds. There are places where little children, boys, are on filthy mattresses where they just get raped over and over again. There are millions of people in bondage. Stop sweeping it under the rug. Take your personal healing and apply it. Please. I usually say I need to take a minute, but I'm going to take a night. I'll talk to you tomorrow, hopefully at 3, but I had to wait for them to move the concrete truck again today. Not complaining. They're doing a fabulous job. They completely redid the house next door, and it's amazing. I mean, they ripped out the driveway, the yard, the sidewalk. Just, it's pretty cool. But they laid the framework for a whole new staircase up, you know, from the street today. So we're going to have some more concrete truck action tomorrow. Can't guarantee I'll be on at 3, but there will be one of these, and it will go to YouTube, and it'll have the wrong name and no thumbnails until I get around to fixing that or get an assistant. Neither of which is in my imminent future, but give me a couple days. FG, freely given. FGKIA. FGKIA. Hashtag FGKIA. Please, hashtag. Just start attaching it to things. We need to spread freely given, knowledgeable, informed consent per Joyce Short's convincing me quite easily that this is the baseline of changing the nature of the judicial system when it comes to those of us who have been sexually assaulted in our lives. We have the right to stop these people, which is why I always say forgiveness is overrated. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. And bye. Yes, really end, really end.